Eddie Wilson here with the Think Realty podcast, and we're actually tag teaming it today. We've got my co-host, Avi Golhar, who is always the main host, but now I jumped in on his thing. So we're excited about that because we've got a great interview today. We're doing a series of interviews and podcasts revolving around our resident experts and the resident expert program. We've got an awesome resident expert today, but before we jump into that, Avi, tell us who sponsors the show.
Today, it's Peer Street. Peer Street is a two-sided marketplace for investing in real estate. They empower originators with technology, capital, and resources to make it easier for their borrowers to fulfill their real estate vision. They allow retail investors to generate passive income by investing fractionally in the loans offered on their platform. The hope is to change the status quo from the start to finish and make investing in real estate simple and easy. Check them out. Go to peerstreet.com. Again, that's www.peerstreet.com for more information. All right, we've got Greg Slaughter. Greg Slaughter not only is a Think Realty resident expert, but he is a genius when it comes to property management.
I would agree with that.
He's laughing, but he is also very humble about the entire process of property management. He's also like the guy that I go to whenever I have property management related questions. Believe me, if there's one thing that I hate more than anything is dealing with tenants. And every time I call Greg, he's like, hey, just do this. And it fixes my problem like that. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because if you're a long-term real estate investor, you know the challenge of dealing with tenants. And you want to make sure that your property is always going to be up to snuff. Greg's your guy. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so let me jump in because, and if you don't mind, we're going to ask you some hard ones today. You cool with that?
Absolutely. Okay. Go for it.
And then the funny thing is like we think they're hard, but probably they're not hard to you.
Yeah. So I don't think you're going to be able to come stump me at all.
Oh, that sounds like a challenge.
Challenge.
All right, let's do that. So no, I'll start off with an easy one, and that is, most real estate investors, as they're putting together their portfolio, they've got 1 or 2 properties, 3 properties, maybe they're on to 10 properties. Why should I manage them myself? I'm in that boat, right? Like I pay someone else to manage. Now, I want to hear your answer on that because sometimes for me, just paying somebody 10% is like, I get to get rid of my headache. And I know that you've got a very specific thought on that. So why not just give it away?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, nobody wants to manage properties. I mean, let's be honest. I didn't want to manage property. No investor I've never met an investor that wants to self-manage their properties. Mm-hmm. We didn't get in this business for that. I've never met someone that said, you know what, I think I want to be a real estate investor because I really want to manage tenants and toilets. Mm-hmm. That's just not how it works. Mm-hmm. So of course, I would prefer to hire a property manager. Everybody would. But the thing is I've discovered 2 things over the course of my time. First of all is that when you hire a property manager, you think you're going to be able to make more money, but it ends up being you actually end up making less. Mm-hmm. And I can dive into that a little bit deeper if we want. Well, the reason I got into it, quite frankly, is because I actually hired 2 property managers when I first started. Mm-hmm. And one lasted about 18 months and the other one lasted less than 6 months. And I ended up firing both of them. Mm-hmm. I ended up firing both of them because I felt like they were costing me more money than I could have just done it myself. So I think just like most investors, I started off by I had to do this because I had to make more money. Mm-hmm. I had mortgages on these things and I had bills to pay. And if I didn't make more money, I couldn't pay the mortgages. Mm-hmm. So I basically forced myself to do it because I had no other option but to do it. I think the reason I do it today, though, is because I think I've discovered the secrets of how to make it easy. So it's almost like I already have a property manager, but I don't have to pay for one now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's when I think property management and doing it myself, I just firmly believe sometimes that it's just not scalable. Like there's nothing you can tell me that's going to, if I'm doing something, my time doing something is better spent either raising capital or finding properties or anything else aside from property management. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers are wondering, wait, so you're telling me that Greg manages his own properties and can do so at scale? I want to understand how that even happens.
Yes, absolutely. To go back to the point where it says it costs you more money and why I ended up doing this in the first place, because that'll explain why the scaling, is because what I discovered, and just myself, and also talking to hundreds of other investors that manage their own properties as well, when they use property managers, is generally speaking, and this isn't hardcore number, but generally speaking, I think property managers, regardless of what they tell you, cost somewhere between 30 to 35%. So that's the numbers that I have found to be throughout the.
Wait, stop there.
Wow.
So you're saying
Yeah.
that what actual number that a real estate investor should be looking at is, generally speaking, gross, right, or net? I guess net. What that net is 30% of whatever that rent dollar is what the property manager is costing you.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason I came up with that price and the numbers show that price is not just what they charge, because they obviously have their monthly fees, they obviously have their upcharges on everything they do, but it's also in the amount of vacancy that they'll have versus the amount of vacancy that you'll have. The amount of repair will cost versus the repair costs that you can do. So when you factor all those numbers into play, and I've done this literally for 20 plus years now and spoken to hundreds of investors, and those numbers are pretty consistent. So it's somewhere between 30 to 35%, in my opinion, is what a property manager really costs. So to your question as far as scaling, what I had to do is I had to find out, or when I started, obviously I only had about 4 or 5 properties. Now I have dozens and dozens of properties in multiple states, and I self-manage all of them. And the way I was able to do that is basically find the systems in order to make that work. And I had to completely change the way my mindset worked on the entire industry. Because in my opinion, the industry is broken and it's flawed. I think property managers in general, they want to do a really good job, but unfortunately because the industry is broken and flawed, they just follow what everybody else does, and that's why it ends up costing them the 30 to 35% of your properties. Whereas if you could figure out the secrets, which I believe I found, and you can actually eliminate that, not need the property manager, but then you basically just have a property manager that doesn't cost you anything. Let me give you an example. So what I discovered when I was studying this stuff is that this industry teaches us as investors that we're the landlord and that we're the property manager. But once I really started diving into it, I had to ask myself, am I really the property manager? Because if we think about it, who is the individual that's at the home every single day taking care of the landscaping, mowing the grass and taking care of the bushes?
Yeah, the tenant.
Who is it?
Yeah.
The tenant, right?
Yeah.
Who's at the home every single day making sure the inside of the house is clean and in proper condition?
The tenant.
The tenant, right? Who's the individual that's at the home that as soon as something breaks down, they initiate the process or system or whatever it is you have in place to get the repair taken care of? Who is that?
Yeah, it's the tenant.
It's the tenant, right? So who really is the property manager?
That's the tenant.
It's the tenant is the property
The answer
manager.
is the tenant.
The answer is the tenant.
Right. The tenant is the property manager, right? So, and I know that sounds like semantics, but once
Yeah.
you actually start thinking about it, you start looking at the business a little bit differently. And then when I discovered that, you look at things completely differently because it's like, you know what? I'm not the property manager. They're the property manager. So what my job is, if I'm not the property manager, my job is I'm the CEO of this business. And I treat every individual property as its own individual business. And I'm the CEO of this business, and my job is to hire the property manager. And in this case, the property manager is the tenant.
So hold on. How do you incentivize tenants then to like do this? Because now you're essentially taking the job of a property manager and you're offloading it to the tenant who you're saying is the property manager.
Right. And that's a perfect segue into, I told you there's 2 things I discovered. So that was, and we
I
didn't
told you
plan
we'd get
this.
there.
We didn't plan
I
this
told
at
you
all.
we'd get
So it was
there.
perfect segue. So, because the second thing I discovered is, and this is a big industry flaw, and one of the reasons why it's broken is that everybody, and even all the gurus teach about this, and you read the books and everything you've ever learned in this industry for 50 plus years or whatever, how long it's been around, is that you want to find the perfect tenant, right? How many times have you heard that? You got to find the perfect tenant. You just screen, you find the perfect tenant.
Yeah.
Well, what I discovered is that that's a needle in a haystack. You might as well be looking for a unicorn, right? Especially when you start trying to make them be the property manager. It's almost, it's daunting, it's almost impossible. So what I discovered is that I'm not looking for the perfect tenant. I create perfect tenants, and that's the difference. So when I'm looking and I'm scouting for someone, I'm looking for a prospect. I'm not looking for the tenant. I'm looking for someone I can train. And again, that may sound like semantics, but this is basically how the entire industry changes. If you can change your mindset, is that you're not the property manager, they are, and that you're not looking for the perfect tenant, you're creating the perfect tenant. So for example, like we don't show homes. You know, everybody, when you're renting a house, you got to show the home, right? You got to show the home, and then you got to find out if they can financially afford it, if they can pay the rent, and if they can, if they like the home and they can pay the rent, then you rent it out to them. That's pretty much the formula in this industry, has been since the existence of time, right?
Yeah.
We don't operate that way at all. So what we do is I'm looking for a prospect that I can potentially train to be the perfect tenant. And when we show the homes, of course, they got to like the home, But that's an interview. We call that an interview process. We are actually interviewing the tenant. And if they're going to be a property manager, then I'm going to need to know whether or not they have the ability and the skills to do that job. So I want to ask them, do you own a lawnmower? Have you ever mowed grass before in your life? Have you ever cut bushes before? Who took care of the landscaping at your last home? What cleaning supplies do you have? What tools do you have? Do you have a screwdriver? Do you know how to use it? Do you know what a GFC outlet is? Do you know how to turn off and on a breaker? I mean, I could go on and on and on. We have a list of like over 100 questions that we can ask our tenants, but it's an interview, and that's how we're screening our tenants. I don't care whether or not they like the house. Obviously, they gotta like the house or they're not gonna move in, but we will cross anybody. If they don't know how to use tools and they don't know how to use a lawnmower, I don't want them in my houses. Because I don't want those phone calls. I don't want that. I don't want those headaches.
So I'd be a bad tenant for you, pretty much. I mean, I know what a
Yeah,
lawnmower
I
looks
know
like.
you. I'm not taking care of you. Yeah.
You just failed the interview.
You're one of those prima donna tenants that want nothing to do with it.
So, I mean, this seems like a very interesting process, right? The entire tenant interview process. Does it really lead to long-term tenants?
Oh, absolutely. When you combine, well, it's a lot more than that. Obviously, we're in a very short amount of time.
Time out
here,
for a
but-
second. Time out. If you ask me about the property management, my head is going to go down. You're going to ask me about, and I'm going to get more defeated.
All the time.
You literally just asked him a question, and he like got in his chair. He's all excited. Yeah, it does.
He's sitting
I've
straighter,
never
he's
seen.
laughing.
He's way too excited about this process.
Yeah, it's just like what?
Well, like I said, I think if you actually follow this process, it's almost like if you can actually create the perfect tenant, and in my mind, the perfect tenant is a property manager that's taking care of the property and they stay for many years. Our goal is 6 years or more.
Wow.
And if you can get them to do that, it's basically you have a property manager for each individual house and you're not paying them. How many of you would like to hire a property management company that takes care of one house so you know they can do it, and you don't pay them?
Yeah, let's ask. How many of you would like to? It's like every hand goes
I do.
up. Yeah, exactly.
Right. See, that's the goal, and that's the whole process. That's how my mind thinks, and that's how we do things.
This isn't just too good to be true, right?
I don't know. Can I hire you to do mine?
Just for the record, I do not manage properties.
I know,
right?
that's the craziest part.
We started this by saying nobody wants to manage properties. There's no way in the world I'm ever going to do that business.
But you do teach others to do your system.
Absolutely. I will teach others. I mean, I'm not in competition with them, and I
Yeah.
want to help as many people as I can. Absolutely. So I teach other investors how they can do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so go back for a second. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, property management, right? Every hedge fund in America has gotten into the single-family space. Wall Street's there. Yeah, retirement funds are there. All the way down to the mom-and-pop guy that owns 2 or 3 rental properties. And you're saying the entire industry is flawed. I get now why it is. And you're saying every guru teaches you what you just talked, like the opposite of what you just talked about.
Right.
And so we've got a bigger issue here, right, than just, and I don't, you can say whatever you want about gurus. I don't care. But it's like, I feel like we got a bigger issue here. So how do we solve this on a global, national scale, right? Because I own properties. I own properties.
Right.
And I get the same answer from my property manager every month, which is the one you just said is not the right answer, which is, well, we just got to screen better. If we just screen better, if we just screen a little bit more, like you need to stop pushing us so hard on occupancy so we get a little bit more time to get a better tenant so that we get longer tenants. That's the answer I get, right? So your property manager out there, you're watching, just know, like we're figuring something out here.
I'm going to blow your mind on this right now. So
I don't know if I
you
can
want me to
handle it
really
anymore.
blow your mind right now? Okay. So the funny thing is,
Curled in a ball, like
the funny thing is the more they screen, the less likely you are going to get the perfect tenant. I'll give you a perfect example. Everybody out there uses credit scores, right?
Right.
Everybody, the better the credit score, the better the tenant, right? That's how they do. Do you know that the better the credit score, the less likely you are going to get to a perfect tenant?
because they leave too soon.
Bingo. So because if the perfect tenant, I want the perfect tenant to stay there for 6 years. You and I both know if they have good credit, really good credit, and they make good money, what are they going to do sooner rather than later? You may get them to stay there for a year or two, but they're, generally speaking, they're gone after a year or two, right? Because they're going to go buy a home. Why do I want those people in my house? I don't want those people.
I only do because I've been told that that's what I'm supposed to want.
I do not
That's
want those
exactly what I was gonna, like. I want somebody that has a credit score of 720 or
Yeah,
higher,
yeah.
or 750 or higher.
We do the exact opposite because those people are not who I want in my homes. I don't want it to be turning my homes. How I discovered this is when I actually started figuring out, who is the perfect tenant? Well, I want my tenant to be in there for 6 years. So I started looking like every single time one of my tenants was moving out, it's like they bought a home. They bought a home. They bought a home. It's like, why are these people buying homes? It's like, I don't want these people anymore. So I actually rule out people with really good credit. I do the exact opposite. I want people with bad credit. And then, of course, the next question I know you already want to ask me, and I know
it's
everybody
coming.
out there
It's
wants to ask me, is like, well, if you get somebody with bad credit, they're never going to pay the rent,
Yeah.
right? That's the question everybody wants to know. Well, let me challenge you on that. So how many people do you personally know, maybe intimately out there, is that you know that paid all their bills on time, was really good at payment, but unfortunately, sometimes bad things happen to good people, right?
Yeah.
They get in a car accident, they rack up a lot of medical bills, destroys their credit, but they're good paying people. You know anybody like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all know those people,
Plenty.
right? School loans wreck people's credit, right? Or they have a divorce,
Yeah.
a death in the family, something that really sets them back. And maybe they've been set back for 6 months or a year, but now they're back on their feet and they're going again, but their credit is destroyed.
Yeah.
Those are the best tenants you can humanly possibly get because one, they can't buy a house. Two, no one else will touch them because their credit is wrecked and everybody else in the industry doesn't want to touch these people.
Yeah.
So not only are they going to be long-term tenants, but they're grateful and they're thankful
Yeah.
because you accepted them and you're working with them and you're helping them.
Wow.
And they're going nowhere. So you want really good tenants? Don't go for the really good credit. You got to learn how to discover and how to find these
Fetal
people.
position, I feel like, is about to happen here pretty soon.
And now I want to take a look at the P&Ls for all my properties
Yeah.
and
See if
just
it's
like,
30%?
Yeah, 35%. Probably gonna like come back to 40, 42.
I feel like I'm pretty good. I'm probably in the 28 range.
I just never thought, it never computed for me that it is that expensive.
Me either. That number blew my mind when you said it.
Yeah, it blew my mind. I had to double check, triple check.
Well, and
I
if-
started asking other investors. I still didn't believe
I
it.
totally get it when you put it all together, and I have experienced that, and I bet you it probably is right.
Yeah.
But then you start thinking about, you back that process up, and we buy assets based on the potential of their performance. Well, very few of mine perform at a level that a 35% loss year over year makes sense. Like that,
There's no
they
way.
don't make sense. Like I don't know of an asset that I could invest in and
Yeah.
pay 35% to own
Right.
and still make money.
And I think that's why most investors end up self-managing the properties.
Yeah.
They may not even know what the exact numbers are, but they know they're not making enough to survive. They got a
Right.
mortgage. You think your property is making $200, $300 a month, but at the end of the year, it's like you haven't made anything. It's
Right.
like, where's all the money?
And
Where
you're
did it
still
go?
paying the mortgage, and you're still paying the insurance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I hear so many people that are discouraged, and I hear this all the time, especially like in the more sophisticated realms. It's like, well, I realize that I got in for cash flow. Where I'm at right now is appreciation. Like,
Right.
look at this market; it's amazing. Like, all they're
Right.
doing is justifying bad performance.
Yes, absolutely. And the sad thing is that you just go from one property manager to another property manager to another property manager, and it's no fault of the property managers. They're doing the best they can. I don't think it's the system. It's a
Yeah.
broken system. It's flawed. So you can change 10 different property management companies, and unfortunately, generally speaking, you're going to get the same results.
And
I mean,
think-
some are going to be better than others, but
Think about this too. I only buy in markets that I believe I can find good tenants in, where I can find higher credit scores, right? Like you change that dynamic and you actually can get performance out of a C or a D class area,
Yeah.
then it changes the game. right?
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Columbus,
Yeah.
Detroit,
Right.
Indy. I mean, all these areas where you have distressed assets. I would never have thought to put somebody with a 500 or 600 credit score into these areas, and now all of a sudden I'm actually making more money from a bottom line perspective.
Right. Now, you do got to get really good about finding those particular individuals because obviously when you're dealing with bad credit,
Yeah.
especially when you market, like we'll market, like your credit score doesn't matter because we want to pull as many of those people in as possible. And you have to weed through them. Because a lot of those people have bad credit because they have bad credit,
Yeah.
right? There's a
Yeah.
reason for that.
They're just not
Yeah.
paying
You,
bills.
you got to go through and be able to find and pick those individuals
Yeah.
with the bad credit,
At some
but are
point-
good payers.
At some point, I want to have you back, and we could just talk about what your lead funnel looks looks like
Yeah.
your top of funnel marketing strategy to find these people. But we can't do that now because we've got to go.
Oh, that was fast.
Obviously,
We just wanted to get them excited and
and
wanted
that's,
more.
That's the hook,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That works.
Speaking about that, do you mind giving them
Please.
how to find you or how to find this course? Because I know many of them are going to be interested.
Absolutely. So I had so many people ask me about how do you do this, how to do this. And so instead of me answering those questions thousands of times, I actually put it together, pre-recorded over 8 hours of training in my course. And you can just simply go to, if you want more information on it, you can just simply go to my website, gregslaughter.com, and you can check it out there.
Very good.
All right, thank you, Realty Nation. That's the show. If you have any questions for Greg, you have his information, gregslaughter.com.
Social media, all that stuff active. They can find you everywhere?
Yeah, social media, it's Greg Slaughter Legacy. So just go to Greg Slaughter Legacy, and my website's gregslaughter.com.
And his Instagram is lit, by the way. You have to check it out.
Oh, thanks.
I'm telling you, it's lit.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
It's lit on fire. It's kind of okay.
I'll take your word for it.
If you have any questions, get in touch with us. thinkrealty.com/podcast for previous episodes and future episodes as well. That's where Eddie and I live. This podcast was brought to you by Peer Street. Peer Street is a two-sided marketplace for investing in real estate. Check them out. Go to peerstreet.com. They empower originators with technology, capital, and resources to make it easier for their borrowers to fulfill their real estate vision. They then allow retail investors to generate passive income by fractionally investing in the loans offered on their platform. The hope is to change the status quo from start to finish and make investing in real estate simple and easy. Again, www.peerstreet.com for more information. Think Realty Nation, it's been fun. Until next time, happy investing.